Yo, what's up? This is Fantasy Fling, DFS Army. Another week in review. We are looking back at week 9. What won the Millie Maker? We're going to look at MME strategy of top DFS pros and do a little cash lineup review. So let's hop into it. All right, guys, I am over on Fantasy Labs looking at the winning Millie Maker lineup for week 9. So we got Ikeyser 21 here with 101 lineups, so definitely not a single bullet type of week in the Millie Maker, and hit it with a Caleb Williams to Olamide Zaccheaus stack with also Kyle Monangai and a Jamar Chase bring back. So this lineup was crazy, right? Because it's a Caleb plus running back plus like third wide receiver with the Jamar Chase bring back. And Jamar Chase was kind of the disappointment of the lineup from a salary perspective. 8,400, only scored 20 points. That's not typically what you need. I mean, he's what, like 2x here, 2.4, 2.5x. Typically from a player of 8,400, and it's across the whole lineup, like you're typically going to need about 4x the salary. But this is something we do see time and time again, where you'll have some players that will absolutely crush the slate, get 9x their salary, like Brock Bowers here, right? And then you have guys who will, get like 2x, but they get enough, they get 20 points, and someone like getting 6 to 9x kind of carries the lineup. And really there were multiple spots here. Caleb Williams, 6x the salary. Drake London, 6x the salary. Brock Bowers, 9x, Titan Z, 8x. So that is how a Jamar Chase gets here. And, when we were kind of looking at the slate early on in the week, it made sense. Like, there was going to be so much running back value with Kyle Monangai, filling in for Swift and Trevion Henderson. And, Tyrone Tracy was underpriced. And there was just so much running back value that it made sense on this slate to eat that running back value chalk, at least some of it, as this lineup did, and then pay up at wide receiver. And there was so much value that you can even play a Christian McCaffrey. You can eat running back value chalk, as this lineup did, with 5,500 Jaylen Warren, 4,600 Kyle Monangai, and then pay up at wide receiver with Jamar Chase, Drake London, a little bit over 6,400, right? And then Brock Bowers, pay up tight end. So this lineup overall, I think is a very sharp lineup. Some weeks we'll see lineups and we'll just be like, this lineup just terrible, but happened to be just hit the nuts this week. Well, this makes sense because we got the Chicago Bears versus the Cincinnati Bengals, two defenses that were suspect, specifically Cincinnati's. And, you could see a path to this game just going absolute bonkers. Obviously, this one went, even more bonkers than we expected. But with, Caleb to +2, with one of them being the running back, and then Jamar Chase bring back, no surprise. And then, obviously there was Christian McCaffrey, who smashed with 37 points. Drake London really broke the slate. You could see this wasn't like from if you just look at the matchup, if you have that kind of analysis of the slate, like this wasn't one of those spots where like Drake London was screaming value. But if you just watch the games and you realize like how bad Atlanta was the prior week without Drake London, it is so obvious that their passing game funnels through him. And he will have these games where, we saw it last year with Penix when Penix came in, where Penix's just going to target him over and over, and he's going to get the opportunities, and he's a really good football player, and he will have these spike games every so often. So I played him in our draft battle that I had against Geek and Sox Favor this weekend. He carried me in this spot with 41 points. But, the process here is a number one wide receiver getting low ownership, and this is typically where you want to play these guys. And then, Brock Bowers, what can we say except he hadn't been healthy? This guy is the best tight end in the league. Everyone knows it. He's the best tight end in the league. From a talent standpoint, he's the best. And he'd been hurt, but he was healthy. Running full speed in practice. We're like, Brock Bowers is back. 5,000 is too cheap. And he absolutely obliterated the slate with 46 points. And then Titans D, and this is like another lesson. I see a lot of times people will have like very hard like stands like with defenses. And I've been studying Millie Maker lineups long enough to know that you cannot predict defenses. There are so many times when a defense will be in a smash spot and they will just kind of stumble their way to like a 5 or a 6. And yet you'll have a defense that's dead to rights, like 2,300. Like the team that they're going against should score like 40 on them. They're going to get you negative points. What happens? They get 20 points. Defense is the highest position of variance volatility. It is always positive expected value to just take some shots on defenses that are low owned, that no one's on. And then, fade chalk defenses more times than not. Like this will lead you the right way. Like literally you can play a lineup that's super chalk and then you fade the chalk defense and you get you spread out exposures to some of these contrarian defenses, and it ends up being the difference in the slate. So we see a 264 here. He's got Titans D. What about second place? And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these. Okay, so Titans D, second place, and Titans D 1%. And I mean, we may look at the top 10 and it's going to all be Titans D. Yeah. So Atlanta, this was another one I played. People were crapping on Atlanta D. Okay. Top fantasy points dollar play going against, a good, for sure, a good New England team. But like Atlanta is no slouch on defense. This is a team that had allowed the 9th fewest points to opposing offenses. So, yeah, I think it was a pretty good defense. But second place, and let's look at second place again. The run out, Joe Flacco, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. This was the nuts, right? Until that last play. And that is the hard thing about DFS. You can have so many right calls, and, you're watching, you're like, I nailed this. I nailed this lineup. I nailed it. Low-owned Flacco. Field doesn't want to play him. There's the injury. Everyone's on Jamar Chase. Let's do a Chase double with T. Higgins. I get my leverage there with T. And Sam Laporta had a good day. Double tight end. Oh, my God. I zeroed out tight end in the flex. Double tight end was almost the nuts. But last play of that game, like the last big play, Caleb to Loveland, it puts the Caleb lineup in the nuts. So just curious to see what other defenses were played. Yeah, so Titans D pretty much heavily represented in the top 5. Just total, like, I love this lineup. I have 2,300. Let's see what happens. Let's see what Shooter McGavin had. He had Atlanta D as well. So he had Colson Loveland. And I'm so mad at myself because I was so, like, early on in the week, I was so high on Colson Loveland. Because I've been high on him in best ball and just as a prospect. I thought Colson Loveland, I follow some talent evaluators who, have a really good track record. I've been following, their stuff. Matt Waldman is one of them. Rookie scouting portfolio, been subscribing for years, and you see these guys who are really good at evaluating talent, who are finding like some of the gems, and this is what the consensus thinks on this player. But I'm going against the grain, and more times than not, like guys like Matt Waldman are right. So Colston Loveland was a guy that he had actually ranked above Tyler Warren, like just as a fantasy aspect. Like this guy is a special receiver who plays tight end, and you saw it in that game. So it was funny because early in the week I was very high on Colston Loveland, but then once Cole Kmet was active, I was like, I don't like him so much anymore, just because I don't know what the coach is thinking, and they seem to have an affinity for playing Cole Kmet. But Colston Loveland ended up just having his coming out party in this game. And, I'm surprised, like, had Brock Bowers, I think the way the slate kind of set up was like there wasn't a ton of value at tight end. That the value was a running back, so it was very much a 3 running back week, and Bowers absolutely obliterated the slate. 13% ownership, so it kind of killed as far as like DFS goes, the coming out party for Colston Loveland. He gets 32 points, but Bowers gets 46. How many people play double tight end? And that was really, in a lot of ways, like if a lot of people play double tight end, that actually would have been optimal, because not Monangai smashed, but the other value running backs did not. So I love this lineup here, though. This lineup was so close. Just really needed Puka or Amon-Ra to have a huge game. And we're talking about this lineup being the Millie Maker winner. So Shooter McGavin, very sharp player. I've seen several of Shooter McGavin's lineups in the top 10 of the Millie Maker. So let's actually, I wasn't planning on doing this out because I didn't look at it before at all, but I want to look at his exposures real quick. So, sometimes it's so funny watching this and just kind of looking at these lineups, because you would think he would have taken like a high stand on Puka, but he had less than 1% Puka. So, it was one lineup, one Puka lineup, and it made it to the top of the leaderboard, top 3 finish. Amon-Ra, same thing. 1% Amon-Ra, what? So was very heavy on Alameda. Rashee Rice, T. Higgins. Okay. So I love that. I love playing T. Higgins when Jamar Chase is like uber shock, because it's like he's so much cheaper than Chase that it's like, yeah, Chase is going to get the targets, but what if Higgins gets the tutties? And that's what happened. And Higgins was definitely more optimal than Chase, for sure. Juwan Jennings, 42%. So a lot of Jennings, wide receiver 1 role, getting healthy, in a great game environment. I love that. A lot of Chase. So Shooter definitely goes very high in a few spots with ownership. Was a lot of Parker Washington, a lot of Ladd. I would definitely say Shooter is very much a ball knower. I'm not so much sure he's a sim bro, because when I look at the lineups of the sim bros, they do not play like this high of exposure in this many spots. So shout out to Shooter. Colston Loveland. When I say ball knower, I promise you can look at DFS sim bros. They will not have this much ownership on a tight end right here. Ball knower, for sure, and takes his shots. No doubt about it. So Christian McCaffrey, a lot of CMC. I love that. Actually faded a bit Kyle Monangai, which that makes sense. So when we go back up here, we look at Colson Loveland, a lot of exposure to Colson Loveland, decent amounts of Brock Bowers, had the double tight end build, good amount of Kyron, good amount of Chase Brown. So the one mistake, obviously, is you wanted to be over on Kyle Monangai at his price, and was over on Vidal, and over on Travion. You really wanted to fade Vidal, and was actually over on Tyrone Tracy too. So these two were like a massive disappointment, specifically Vidal, because his spot was actually really good. And, he'd been running really hot, but they were banged up on the offensive line. They got more banged up as the game went on. And also, like, this wasn't like the game script that we had projected. And both of these guys were incredibly wrong just because, we loved Tyrone Tracy just because like last year we saw before Cam Scatterbo, he was the runner slash pass catching running back out of the backfield, and he was the guy before Cam Scatterbo, and he took over the backfield after Singletary got hurt last year. But then Singletary comes back, and he had the backfield last year, but then when Cam Scatterbo gets hurt this year, you would think that it's Tracy's job, but no, it was actually like a 50-50 split. And that backfield on that team, you don't want a 50-50 split. Just, you definitely do not. I love the Henderson play. They just don't seem to like him that much. And I just don't know what it is. But also, here's the thing. Like, they're not a good running team. Trevion Henderson is going to be one of those picks that cues people to say, never wrong, just early. Trevion Henderson is going to be a stud. But I think the Patriots need to see more from him and, throughout the offseason, whatever the coaching staff, maybe they don't like rookies, whatever. I don't exactly know what it is, but they're also not a good run blocking team. So I think another year I could see a total smash breakout from Trevion Henderson, especially because at that point, like, people will probably be, they'll be scared. They'll be scared to draft him, and that's probably when we should. And then, look at this. This is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, we're gonna go to Udicows in a second. Flacco, 47%. Mahomes, 35%. So very heavy. I liked the Mahomes. I love the Flacco. I mean, that is crazy exposure though to a guy who's 41, was dealing with a shoulder sprain, and is only 4% of the field is playing. But, like, really small pool, right? So we're talking Flacco and Mahomes. I mean, that's like 80% exposure. And then just, a few guys. So clearly he's on checking names when he sacks his quarterback. And then, so Caleb, I mean, these are one lineup: Stafford, McCarthy, Allen, May. So basically Flacco, Mahomes, that's 80% plus, and then Caleb, another 10%. Atlanta, Detroit, LA Rams. I mean, goodness gracious. That's some crazy exposure. Okay, so let's take a look at Udicow. Puka Nacua, 69%. That is nuts. Almost, and that's the funny thing is Udicow, like, when you look at Udicow, typically, like, his exposures, he's not the kind of player to DFS play to really, like, go crazy like this. So clearly he saw something different on the slate. obviously with the value running backs to just be like, yeah, let me just kind of eat some value and go way over the field in a spot. Everyone is sure it's Jamar Chase. This is way too low of ownership for Puka Nacua. I'm going to eat that chalk. It's almost 70%. And still be over on Jamar Chase, but like close enough to the field, just a little positive leverage there. And then, yeah, when we look here at other wide receivers, flat, right? I mean, very flat. And it's kind of one of those things where I remember listening to Statsational years ago, and he would say, you're going to go very heavy on a couple spots, but because you went so heavy, like in a couple spots, you're basically going to go flat. You're going to go flat in like a lot of other spots. Because it's like, you're not trying to be perfect in your projections. You're taking a couple stands, and because of that, like you're not really taking a lot of stands everywhere else. And that was one thing too that I noticed. Triple the field on Xavier Worthy, under on Rashee Rice, 4% Rashee Rice. So Rashee Rice had been smashed in the past couple of games. I'm going to fade that 4%, and then triple the field on Worthy. So rotate some of that ownership to Worthy. I played the same way in tournaments. For sure, I had a lot of Rashee Rice, but I also had a good amount of just lineups that were just Xavier Worthy builds. But the ballsiest part of it is Puka Nacua, obviously 69%. I know I listened to Udicow on Friday. He did a show, and he was heavy on the Raiders and the Jaguars. So De'Ami Brown, Brian Thomas. It's interesting though, and it doesn't always tell the full story because like he may have been heavy on them in like other tournaments, but in the Millie Maker, this is where he was like under the field on the passing game of the Jags. But and actually, I think Parker Washington, yeah, he had over the field on Parker Washington. But a lot of Brock Bowers, 20%. So I liked that. Juwan Johnson, 20%. Tyler Warren, 23. So yeah, it was pretty heavy on some tight ends. and then yeah, double the field on Christian McCaffrey. So that is a lot. I mean, a chalk running back, he need double the field, 70% Kyle Monangai. So a lot there. A lot of Travion Henderson, almost 30%. I'm kind of surprised Travion ended up 22% owned. A good amount of Jalen Warren. I know optimizers, Sims, they were jamming him in, so just hate it. I guess where he kind of messed up here, and not really. Well, I think what saved him actually. So he was over the field on Tyrone Tracy, like a lot of Tracy, but Tracy was significantly cheaper. However, he did fade Kamani Vidal, who was 6,300. So that certainly hurt him worse. Having that would have hurt him worse if he had more Kamani Vidal at 6,300, who failed miserably, as opposed to Tyrone Tracy, who he had 40%, but he was 5,100. So, and then quarterback was Caleb the highest exposure. All right, Daniel Jones, Caleb 11, Daniel Jones 16, Patrick Mahomes 14, Josh Allen 8. I'm really surprised we did not see more Josh Allen exposure. Nothing too crazy at defense. Very spread out. So more or less spread out at quarterback, defense. A few big things at running back. a few big stands at wide receiver, following the chalk, but, a few like spots at running back where he was way over the field. And then kind of same thing at wide receiver and then flat at quarterback and defense. So I think it's going to do it for the MAE portion of the show. Last but not least, we're doing cash lineup review. It was another profitable week in cash. It's funny. It was one of those crazy weeks where like there was so much value to hit the slate on Friday, and then by Sunday, like it was kind of the same. So, I waited a little while for DFS Army VIPs. And by the way, guys, if you like these breakdowns, use code Fantasy Fling. That gets you 10% off a VIP subscription. Of course, if you want to join, and I just want to go over real quick the Sims. My boy DFS Spreadsheets. Shout out. He's been crushing the Sims. We just did the Millie Maker winner. Okay. Caleb Williams in the Millie Maker winning lineup. We're about to go over Jackson Dart, who 5X. Like he nailed these Sims. Kyle Monungai in his simulations, 52%. Christian McCaffrey. So he had the nuts. The 3 out of the 4 top running backs he had here. Wide receiver, he had Chase as well. Olamide Zaccheaus. So very close here with these. Parker Washington had a good score as well. Then Brock Bowers, second highest, top 10% simulation. And Texans even as well. The $2,300 Texans, he had them as the 4th highest defense. So shout out to DFS Spreadsheets. And by the way, if you like these breakdowns, definitely hit that like button. Let us know. Let us know how week 9 went for you. But as I'm finishing here, my cash lineup, I rolled out Jackson Dart. And, he was just projecting really well for us across the board. He had been averaging about 20 points per game. So at 5,100, felt he was too cheap in that matchup. Loved him. Really expected more from Tracy. Did not expect a timeshare. But the price, the ownership, the projection, it was good enough that I was eating that chalk. I told everyone Kyle Monungai, Chase, and Christian McCaffrey were my cores. Did pretty well there. And specifically from a cash value standpoint. I mean, literally all 3 of these guys were in the winning Millie Maker lineup. But from a cash standpoint, like you can't ask for any better than this. 25, 20, 37. I mean, just crazy for floor for cash. Rashee Rice, 18 points, plenty for cash. He was another core for me. Juwan Jennings, 4,300. Theo Johnson, 11 points. Like, Juwan Jennings, 14 points at 4,300. Theo Johnson, I think it was 3,500, 11 points. And then Falcons D. Yeah, this was a great cash week for sure. Had Tyrone Tracy smash. Honestly, had I played Jalen Warren over Tyrone Tracy, like would have been probably a clean sweep in cash games, but profitable day. Good cash week, good overall week at DFS Army. And that's going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining me for another week in review. If this is the first time discovering the channel, make sure you're subscribed. A lot of content coming your way. Got the first look videos, DraftKings, FanDuel, Underdog dropping tomorrow. Got the draft battle. Of course, we got showdown breakdowns, tournament tactics on Friday. We got so much coming your way. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification button so you never miss when we go live. It's NBA season, NHL. The DFS does not stop at DFS Army. I got the link in the video description for code Fantasy Feeling for 10% off a VIP subscription. Join us. Join the community. We'll see you next time.